the Unlearning Ableism podcast, sponsored by Even Break, making the uncomfortable comfortable. Isn't it time we started unlearning? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Unlearning Ableism podcast, sponsored by Even Break.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unlearning Ableism. I am Jamie Shields.
And I'm Celia.
And we are back for another live episode. And we don't know what's going on with the cameras right now. Let's just hopefully... There we go. It went back to normal. Woo! If you're watching us live, we do apologise. StreamYard is not always our friend. But as we said, on with the show. Welcome to another episode of the Unlearning Ableism podcast, sponsored by Even Break, and this is our live version. So you're watching live across Instagram or LinkedIn. If you do need to turn captions on, please switch them on now. There should be an option on whatever platform you're streaming from. If you prefer to have a transcript, please check our website 2 weeks following the live, where we will have a transcript available of today's episode. This episode will also be shared across all major streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, you take your pick, whatever is your favorite. And we also then have a video on YouTube with open captions burnt into the video. But welcome, Celia. How are you?
It's been same from last time that we all got together on live. It's been a busy week. I'll quickly start with a visual description. I am a white female. I have blonde hair that desperately needs dyeing because my root's coming through. I'm sat in front of a cream wall in my new home, and there is a white fireplace behind me and some pictures on top of the fireplace, and I'm wearing about 4 jumpers because I'm absolutely freezing cold, because we seem to have skipped autumn and gone straight to winter, which is not the best. So it's been a busy time, and there's lots of exciting things happening behind the scenes. I also really apologize. Something decided to eat my face alive last night while I was out, and I have bug bites all over my face. I don't know if my camera quality is picking it up, but if you're wondering what that is and why I look a bit different, that is what is going on facially today.
I love that you just said stuff and decided to eat me.
Apparently I looked very tasty. They're like all over my shoulders and everything. It's horrible.
Well, I don't have any of my skin bites. My visual description, I am Casper White today because I have no selfie lights on to hide the imperfections. I am a white male with short dark hair that is pushed up to one side. I have blue eyes that go side to side and all around the camera. Don't panic, there's nothing happening. It's my nystagmus. I have no control of my eyes. I have a short dark beard, and I am wearing I think it's a black shirt with some kind of funky pattern, which I think personally looks lovely. And I am set in my office where I usually am recording this live. But Celia, I feel like it's been so long since we did a live, but literally it was a week ago. Where does the time go? And we're now coming up to the middle of October. I'm stop.
I did this year, just in general, and everybody's talking about it, and I totally agree. Also, let us know in the comments where you're dialing in from. We have a very special guest today who is not from the UK, so we want to hear whereabouts in the world that you're dialing in from. So let us know and jump in the comments and tell us. You're so right. There's so much happening. I feel like in our work lives and in our private lives that time feels very distorted, and it's we're doing a lot.
And do you know what I noticed when you catch up? It's do you know when you catch up with our friend, it's oh, how are you? What were you doing yesterday? And it's oh, I did X, Y, Z, and it was great. It's when we catch up, it's just what did you do yesterday? Right, now tell me what we need to do today, tomorrow, the next week, the next month, because we're just constantly on the go. But we make it work. We find the time. And I'm just looking at the comments, and I see that some people have already commented. We have somebody dialing in from Hamburg in Germany. We have somebody from New York. Thank you for joining us. Just a caveat, we use StreamYard to stream across our LinkedIn and across our Instagram. Sometimes StreamYard does not pull the comments through. It is not that we are trying to ignore anybody. It is generally just that we do not get them pulled across. It is something to do with LinkedIn and StreamYard. Trust us, we bugged StreamYard to fix it. We've done everything. So if we do miss your comment, we do apologize. And then I've also seen somebody saying,
Thailand, amazing. And then some Unlearning Ableism have just commented and said they're tuning in from Belfast in Northern Ireland. I wonder who that could be.
it's not me though. I'm thinking it's a podcast editor. David has accidentally used the Unlearning Ableism one instead of his own. Either way, hi. We've also got somebody dialed in from Thailand. Welcome from Bangkok. But I'm thinking we could go through this and spend hours having a chat with the audience. But instead, let's catch up with our sponsor to start off with, because I'm sure Gemma is behind the scenes here waiting to come on. And I'm just so excited to share it because Gemma is looking fabulous in pink today. Gemma, welcome back to the Unlearning Ableism podcast.
Thanks, Jamie. Nice to see you both. How are you doing, Celia?
Good. Jen, we've got to focus on the hair. It's incredible. It's amazing. Please kick off with your visual descriptions.
Absolutely. So I'm a white woman. I have bright pink hair, shoulder length, which is brand new. I was brunette last week and I've gone bright pink. And I'm sat on a chair that's got a cow print cover on it that most people always comment on when I'm on these things. And then a grey wall behind me. I'm wearing a black jumper. So that's me.
The hair, like, can we just get some love for the hair? Because
It's not even hair, it's her. It's
yes.
today. That was really embarrassing, but I just needed to say it.
Gemma has
I forgot to mention the pink glasses as well, just to top off the pinkness. I'm living in Barbie's world at the moment.
Gemma, I feel like you would absolutely love my car because my car is bright pink. Jamie can vouch, it's absolutely bright pink. So I feel like I love it at this moment.
Like, think Thunderbirds. Do you remember like the car from Thunderbirds, but like bright pink? Stunning. But Gemma, obviously, Even Break is the sponsor of the Unlearning Ableism podcast.
Yeah.
Those who are unsure, Even Break is a global job board helping inclusive employers match their disabled talent. They also do a lot more than that there. They support disabled talent with their career hive. They provide job opportunities. They provide support, one-to-one support, CV support, you name it. If you're a disabled candidate, look on their website. There's so many great resources there. And if you're an employer, then please reach out to Gemma because they will help you find disabled talent. But Gemma, let's get an update. What is going on in the world of Even Break? And can we also talk about you becoming a global brand? Because I think many people still think you are a UK company, which I keep telling them, no, you're not.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for that fabulous introduction. You got it absolutely spot on. And it leads nicely into one of the updates. So we have just become CPD accredited training organisation. So as well as supporting candidates, we also work with employers on lots of different training from disability inclusion, workplace adjustments, neurodiversity, and it's all CPD accredited now, which is fantastic news. We've got over 13,000 jobs live on the job board at the moment. And I know today we're focusing on National Disability Employment Month over in America. We have over 1,700 jobs in North America at the moment that are live. I think I saw someone in the comments a minute ago saying they're from New York, and we've got lots of jobs based in New York. So do go check out the jobs that are on the job board. It's evenbreak.com. I'll share some links in the chat shortly. In terms of being a global organization, it has been Jane, who's our founder and CEO. It's been her ambition for a long, long time to obviously change the disability employment space across the world. And naturally, as we've been working with employers that might be based in the UK, many of them are also global organizations. So it's been a bit of a stepping stone of having initial conversations with brands that might be based in the UK. The whole team is based in the UK at the moment, although we're looking to expand. And it's kind of grown from there. So our CEO, Jane, is off on a bit of an international tour at the end of this month. She's over in America. She's over in Australia. Last year, she was over in both those places, plus Europe. She's come back from Paris from an event recently. So yeah, lots and lots going on. So lots of opportunities on the job board for disabled talent across the world.
Amazing.
That's fantastic.
I can see comments saying Catch is dialing in from Minnesota. We've got Sandra from South Africa, Stacey in Florida. So we're really reaching a global audience today. So perfect moment to promote how global your organization is and the incredibly vast amount of opportunities you guys have available for people at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can we just talk about Jane? Because I just imagine Jane running around the world with this suitcase and a briefcase under her arm, because it sounds like the absolute dream to travel the world, but then you have to remember Jane's going to these meetings in places she's probably never been before, having to navigate that as a disabled person. We know
Yeah.
the nightmares that comes along with being a disabled person
Absolutely.
traveling. And I just imagine Jane running around at these business meetings with his clipboard and suitcase. And I just think, how fabulous is Jane Hatton? If you don't follow Jane Hatton, do go follow Jane on LinkedIn, because I know the other day she was looking to meet employers in some of these locations she's headed. Jem, you look absolutely fantastic. And I love that you get to experience you. Even if every time we do a live, you get to experience yourself or somebody else in Even Break. And I just love it. But sadly, we are going to have to let you go. But before we do, I just want to ask you, what is one action you think all employers should take for National Disability Employment Awareness Month in the US?
Oh, they should expand their reach when it comes to talent and use specialised job boards like Even Break.
Yes! Mic drop.
Had to be a nice to see you all. Bye.
Bye.
Jamie, I have a request at this moment before we welcome and give an introduction to our very special guest. Obviously, a lot of our conversation is going to be around America today. Also reading out some of the comments. I can't see your name, but someone's dialing in from Morocco and Reshma from Dubai. So we're very global today, which is very exciting. I just wanted to pause at this moment and mention, because we are going to be talking quite a lot about the US at the moment and during this episode, about anybody affected by Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene, and especially disabled people that were unable to evacuate or are currently struggling to find accommodation that is accessible and able to shelter them during the evacuation process. Also kind of extending our well wishes. There's been lots of flooding happening in Northern Asia, the conflicts that are happening right now in the Middle East, and the flooding that is also happening in the Sahara Desert right now, which is devastating communities. It seems to be the wrath has hit us all at once across the entire world. So just pausing for this moment to send our well wishes and our prayers to anybody who is currently in those affected areas, or those that have loved ones in those affected areas and are currently very worried about them. As I know, Hurricane Milton struck at about 7 o'clock our time this morning. So it's still very much live and very much active. But I wanted to add that in before we start having our big conversation about the US and the exciting work that Montreece is doing.
100%. Thoughts and prayers with everybody and sending a love and support. Well, let's bring Montreece on, because we have mentioned Montreece coming on a few times, and I think the audience today were also excited to meet Montreece. So without further ado, let's bring on the fabulous Montreece. Hi.
Hi, Montreece.
Hi, everyone. Can you all hear me?
We can indeed. How are you?
Fantastic. I am amazing. I try to make it a point to say good day because it's not morning for everyone. But hi, everybody. My name's Montreece Payton-Hardy, and I am identify as she or her, and I am a blind, low vision, Black, neurospicy woman. My glasses right now, just a quick description, are dark on my face. They're, what is this called? My aviator glasses. I think that's what they're called. And I have dark hair. It's pulled back, and I'm wearing a black and white speckled top. And I currently am working as the Director of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity at American Printing House for the Blind here in Louisville, Kentucky in the USA. It's known as the Midwest. And I am beyond excited to be here with Jamie and Celia. You're two of my favorite people throughout the world. So I appreciate you both. And shout out to all of my people who I invited on today. Hello, everyone.
What an intro. What an intro. And also, like, I have to say this because when I'm doing this live, I'm registered blind. I don't see much that's on my screen. Like, if I'm reading a comment on camera, you know I'm reading a comment because my head is like bobbing up and down on the screen. If I'm trying to do something, you tell because I'm bobbing that way. But I just love that with Jan come on from Even Break and she had a fabulous pink hair and I was able to see her from the distance. And I was like, I know that's Jan. But Montreece, you're wearing the most stylish red lipstick and I can see you from across my screen. And I just have to say, you did not come to play. You've come to slay today. And we're so excited to have you back. And, you know, we've talked so much online. We're so excited to have you here with us finally.
You're both so sweet. Jamie, you know I heart you. Like, Thank you for that.
How do people make these? Every episode, people make
Every
little hearts.
episode, we get someone doing this. For anybody using visual descriptions, we are currently making hearts with our hands. And every episode, we have the conversation about all the different ways people do it. Because millennials, newbies, they now do it with 2 fingers like that on either side. And I no, it's like that.
Yes.
I'm high on that hill.
I don't have, like, the hand-eye coordination is not there for me. Like, I'm like flopping and hoping. I'm like, hopefully that looks like a heart. But lots of hearts to you. But Montreece, I'm conscious because you come on and you've introduced yourself. You've said you're spicy. And I want to ask a question because I've seen a conversation about this here. We've actually seen a few conversations about this week where people have been saying, oh, I'm not sure about the term neurospicy. It's not right for me, and I don't think it's right. And trying to tell others how to place language. And I wanted to start right away because obviously at Unlearning Ableism, we promote that use the language that works best for you. There is no hierarchy of language. An individual's right to self-identify is exactly that. It's the individual's right to self-identify. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on the word neurospicy. And like what encourages you to use it? Because I love it. I'm like, oh, I love it.
I appreciate the question, and thank you for that, Jamie. I use the term once. I heard neurospicy once last year, and I latched onto it. I got a diagnosis of ADHD last year, so I am 42 now, and I just learned about this. Condition for myself, and I had a feeling that there was some reason for how I was and how I thought outside of the box, even as I was a younger person. And when I found out it was ADHD, everything fell into place, and it was very liberating. And because it was liberating, once I heard the term neurospicy, it's an overall umbrella term that can be used to describe those who identify as neurodivergent. Like I said, I connected with it. I believe strongly in inclusive language and just being aware of the different terms that people can use that they are most comfortable with to describe themselves. And I saw a post real quick, just to wrap this up, on LinkedIn. And there was someone who was talking about different words, more positive words that can be used for different populations, particularly those who identify as ADHD, or those autistic individuals, etc. And for example, instead of saying that a person is stubborn, like an autistic person is stubborn, instead one would say that they are strong-willed. And I started thinking about that. For a minute, I thought it was okay, and then I'm like, I feel like there's some ableism behind that, just to make these different traits and characteristics more digestible. I don't think that that's actually necessary. If I'm stubborn, I'm stubborn, and this is part where the spicy comes in. If I'm stubborn, I'm stubborn. If I have these different traits, it's just what it is. I accept me for me, and eventually you will too. And until you get there, we're just going to continue to learn of one another. But this is what is working for me. I've had to deal with internalized ableism for too long. So I use language that is helping to boost my confidence. And for me, it's a big deal because I'm a single mom and I have 2 kiddos. And this is also part of the reason why I do the hand hearts, because of my 2 young people. I have to demonstrate confidence. If they don't see it coming from me, despite ADHD, despite me being blind and low vision and still a working professional, if they don't see it from me, they need to see it in the home. So that's my little take on neurospicy. I'm sure I've missed some things. I hope people in the chat are commenting about their take on neurospicy too.
Michelle, I read out in the comments. Michelle says, I love the term neurospicy, but I'm spicy in general. I love that one. I wanted to add that and read that out. And I think it's a really good kind of moment to also mention. I also really apologize. Builders have just turned up at my house. So if there is a banging, I will put myself on mute to avoid any background noise. There's always one every episode. And this episode, it's going to be me. It's also a really good time to mention, I think the umbrella of neurodiversity is often from the media portrayed as quite small. It's ADHD, it's autism, it's ADHD, and it's a very small bracket of people. And I urge people to understand the fact that neurodiversity includes such a variety of different conditions: Prader-Willi syndrome, epilepsy, PTSD, CPTSD, dyscalculia, DID. There's so many different forms of neurospiciness. I just wanted to add that in as a shoehorn, as a little piece of education for anyone watching who is actually wondering what the term neurodiversity encompasses.
100%. And like, you know what? I'm going to add a little caveat as well, because that's what we do here. It's like Jenga blocks. When I say something, it's like, I want to build it. It's actually like Lego, not Jenga blocks, because Jenga is the one you take away, Lego you add. So my bit of Lego here is, so I was on LinkedIn I think it was over last weekend, and I happened to stumble across somebody who I had connected with for a while. It's somebody who me and Celia actually met on the LinkedIn Creator Program, where we first met, and they were creating content. But they were used, you know, that narrative that we hear, and it's the same old repetitive narrative that, oh, too many people are getting diagnosed as autistic, too many people are getting diagnosed as ADHD. And this person had honed in on the ADHD and had shared information around how basically ADHD is almost like an excuse that we're clinging to, or we're self-diagnosing too much, or oh, well, how's it so popular now?
There's
like a fad.
Around, oh, everybody's ADHD now. It's just bad behavior, and it's just bad.
Pretty much. And then obviously people will have experience. I myself, because we know I'm a bit spicy. Like, I don't sit down. I'm like, no, I'm coming and throwing my spice all over that comment section, because you're not going to say this and have no consequence. You have to understand how this impacts. And so myself and lots of other people are commenting and basically addressing it in a really nice, like I thought in a really nice, polite way. But I think that the person's response showed me exactly just how uncomfortable it can be to unlearn ableism. Because whilst people were saying this is really damaging, what you're saying, this is quite an ableist narrative, this person decided to double down and start to then push on to neurodivergent people. And I was just thinking to myself, that's so much like just a reality of what we face, isn't it? When we do challenge like ableism, when we do challenge something that's inequitable, when we do speak up or advocate, is to be silenced, because people's reaction when they're uncomfortable is either to shut down, get defensive, and in that rare instance, some people stop to listen. And so when we're talking about that, it just came into my mind. And then it's kind of made my mind come back to National Disability Employment Awareness Month, because, you know, in the US, we're both in the UK, as you know, we have Celia and Montreece. Tell us, what is National Disability Employment Awareness Month? What does it mean to you as an individual? And then what should it mean to global organizations, or those particularly in the US?
National Disability Employment Awareness Month, to me, first of all, it's something that I only recently learned about within the past few years. And once I learned about it, I appreciated that there was a space of time that was dedicated to making sure that employers are aware that disabled populations are a strong population, one that is often missed out on for a pool of talent for all sorts of positions, leadership positions, etc., in the workforce. And National Disabled Employment Awareness Month, I always get the disability and employment, those parts, I just used interchangeable words there. But the month in itself, which should be celebrated and acknowledged all year round, by the way, I appreciate that it does dedicate this particular point of time to making sure that you have disabled inclusion practitioners like myself and plenty of others who are even in the audience. And of course, you all, Celia and Jamie, making sure that that they're hearing what the different concerns are with disabled workers, leaders in the workforce, and getting some clarifications on how to recruit and retain these workers. We know, at least I would assume, but at the same time, let me not assume, that 1/4 of the world's population is considered or identified as disabled. In the US, it's the same. In the state of Kentucky, where I am, 1/3 of the population identifies as disabled. And yet the numbers for those who are actually employed are, I think, let me see, one of the statistics I read, it's like maybe in 2022, I think in the US, it was approximately maybe somewhere around 20%. I hope that I'm not too off of disabled people who are actually working in the workforce. So you have different organizations that are doing this work year round, drawing attention to the fact that people with disabilities we're not just here, we're looking to not only work, we want to be recognized for our talent. The opportunities that everyone else has, they should be equitable and available to everyone regardless of disability. And ableism in itself is such a huge barrier, let alone just to job descriptions, let alone the hiring process, let alone once you get in and the accommodations one may need. There's so many ableist mindsets and challenges and barriers that are created for people with a range of disabilities who just want to do their work, make their money, and contribute to a cause, and also and have an impact in this world. Everyone should have that opportunity. And National Disability Employment Awareness Month is a great time to highlight that. But I'm hoping one of my biggest things, if anyone takes anything away from this today, is don't just keep it at October. Don't keep your education and your learning about disabled employment in the month of October. Think about this year round. Invest in learning year round. Invest in learning from people with disabilities and neurodivergence year round so that you can increase the quality of your workforce. I hope that answers the questions a bit, Jamie.
Brilliant answer. And I wanted to come in there and kind of add to what you were saying. So here in the UK, the statistics are iffy, if you ask me. The official statistics is that the employment gap between disabled people and non-disabled people is somewhere around 17 to 20%. It varies slightly depending on where we're at with the year. That is a reduction of about 5.9% over recent years. And that's something to be celebrated. And on initial kind of looking at the data, we go, yay, this is so exciting. The gap is closing. But I question it with a policy mind, and maybe this is me being cynical and
Absolutely.
me with my I see ableism everywhere lens. To me, there's a massive difference between employment and meaningful employment. Are these basic level roles where it's just somebody just trying to get a job? Have they had choice, or have they had to take the only job available to them?
Right.
But even kind of on this outer face, it looks like that employment gap is going down. Actually, when we dive into it, and I think it's something really worth mentioning because I don't think it gets enough conversation, are people now employment out of choice, or have they been forced to due to cuts in social care? Have they done that job because that was the only job that was offered to them and nobody else would offer them employment, so they've had no choice? Is that the job that they were trained at university, etc., and wanted to do? All of these questions, which I think are so important in what you were saying there around, there has to be this meaningful intention. It can't just be tokenism to say, well, 10% of our workforce identifies as disabled, so we're meeting our objectives.
Yes.
It's not about that. Is the progression there? Is the support there? Are there ERGs there? Are the systems there? Are we moving forward? Or is this purely a tick box exercise? So I just wanted to add that. And Dave also said, coming in with the comments and bringing in the audience, that he has written a book called Austin's Amazing Adventures, The Big Test, which breaks down social barriers and much needed representation to children living with low vision, blindness, and additional needs. So go over to his page and check that out. And Michelle has put the most wonderful comment that I've seen this entire session. We are still investigating what I am now at age 52. Definitely spicy, sometimes cinnamon, sometimes Hungarian paprika, sometimes full-on ghost pepper. I suppose the best way to say it is I'm trying to figure out who I am. And I just thought that was a wonderful.
I love that.
I love that too. Jamie, do you mind if I pop in here real quick?
Oh, of course. Go ahead.
I did pull a quote too. And wait, who was that who said that there's cinnamon and spicy?
Michelle.
Michelle. Okay, I'm going to come back to that too. That was a great comment. I'm glad that you read that out, Celia. So the quote that I just wanted to share on this topic is one of my favorites. Judy Heumann,
Yes.
Peace, said, one of her many great quotes, she said, the real barrier to employment for disabled individuals isn't capability, it's systemic discrimination. And highlighting that, focusing on that, and thinking about, like you were just talking about, Celia, not just employment, but meaningful employment. Like I was saying, employment for all that allows people to make the impact that they want to in the world. That is what I believe in Deem is about also. So I love that you just shared that. Last thing I wanted to say real quick about Michelle's comment, a little bit of this and a little bit of that and all those spices mixed together, that's where we get intersectionality, which is something that I speak to and write about all the time. So I would consider you, Michelle, in my own mind and like myself, an intersectional neurospicy, and that is fantastic for you. However, by all means, continue to investigate that term if you don't happen to know what it is. I think we may be talking about it a little bit today. Are we going to talk about intersectionality?
We are indeed. We are
Okay.
indeed.
There we go. So, so let's learn and talk a little bit more about that. And then I'd love to hopefully connect. Let's connect on LinkedIn, Michelle, so that because I want to continue to follow your journey as you're learning exactly where you fall in your spiciness. Okay, that was it. Thanks, Jamie.
No thanks needed. And this is exactly what this is about. It's about sharing experiences. If you listen back to this in the podcast and you're wondering, what comments are they talking about? What are they reading? Who's Michelle? What's happening? Come to our LinkedIn page, come to our Instagram page, and you can watch back the live episodes of each of the podcast episodes where you can get involved in the conversation. You can ask questions, you can share, you can veg, you can rant, whatever you want to do in that space. And yes, talking of intersectionality and intersecting identities, it's so important that we aren't just disabled. It's not just that's just who we are. It's just one piece of our identity. And it's very much, I think, like these kind of milestones, like National Disability Employment Awareness Month. In the UK, we have at the moment Black History Month. We also have today World Mental Health Day. All these kind of what some organizations and some people will look at separate entities or separate things, when actually we're all intersecting. We all have intersecting identities, and these things aren't just one piece of us. We can't celebrate one without recognizing the other. We can't celebrate one without recognizing the other. It doesn't work like that there. It's not this or that. It's all. And that's I think something that's really important to talk about today, especially because we are talking about the experiences of being disabled and trying to find employment. But I think we can't talk about that without talking about the additional oppressions that somebody who is Black is going to have to experience. And I wonder, Montreece, if you could talk about some of your own experiences as being a disabled Black woman looking for work, or in your especially disabled Black woman looking for work.
Absolutely. I also want to, so first let me give Kimberly Crenshaw's definition. Kimberly Crenshaw,
Yes.
Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw is who coined the term. And I'll read her quote and definition. Intersectionality is a lens through which we view systems of power and privilege, helping us understand why some communities face compounded forms of discrimination. And it's the compounding that creates the that intersectional experience. I know definitely for myself, and I'm sure there are others out there who may agree. Also, as we're celebrating and talking about National Disabled Employment Awareness Month, we're also celebrating here in the US National Hispanic Heritage Month. And then in the UK, it's Black, is it Black History Month?
And I also have here that Maddie has posted a comment that says tomorrow is also National Coming Out Day in the US. The intersection is formally season. So wishing you all celebrations for tomorrow.
Right. Absolutely. It's all of these different things. And then what is October 15th that is coming up next week is here in the US, White Cane Safety Day. So there's a number of different identities that I personally have. And they create this feeling many times of compounded discrimination in my job, not in my job, in my working experience. One of my examples has been not recently, but maybe within the past few years, as I've been growing throughout my career. There are times when I have experienced discrimination and I'm trying to figure out, okay, is it because I'm Black? Is it because I'm a female? Is it because I'm blind? and there are many times when it feels like it's both. There was an experience in 2020. I can't remember if I might have mentioned this the last time we talked, and I hope I'm not saying the same thing. But there was an experience I had with an organization where this was around 2020 with the onset of COVID. And then what I've heard some other populations and on other podcasts, it was described as the experience of a double pandemic for different populations here in the US. Not only was it COVID that was being experienced, but also the what has been feeling like a genocide, and many view it as a genocide of Black people and an attack on Black people, what is in different parts of the world, and in many parts of this country, most parts of the US. And at the time, things got really heightened with the murdering of George Floyd. So I'm working and these different things are happening. And someone actually said to me, we were talking about a project, we're working remotely, but we were talking about a project. They were checking in, trying to make sure that I was going to get through it quickly. And they said, I don't want to put my knee on your neck. And that hit very hard in light of what all was happening. And also at that time, I had just learned about my blindness as at the time, what is it, 2019 is when I got diagnosis for blindness and low vision. And so I was already feeling pressure and concern about my work performance just because this blindness and low vision was very new to me and it was impacting my productivity and how I worked. But then to have that type of comment said at work as well, it created a bit of workplace trauma for me. And I felt like I was experiencing some forms of toxicity. I had also been working with another manager who was saying they don't know how to talk with me. They feel like many times I'm angry, and there's a stereotype of being an angry Black woman. And I asked them off the record, had they ever worked with Black people before? And their answer was no. And so these are just a few experiences that I've personally had in the workplace where in my experience, I'm thinking through, what is being discriminated and attacked. And then it's exhausting. There are so many books. I'm trying to think of the name of one of them right now. If I think about it, I'll drop it in the chat or share it out later. But all of this discrimination and workplace toxicity and so on, it is exhausting. And when you have these multiple points of identity where you're in marginalized groups, for me, that's 3 times over as a woman, a cisgender woman, as an African American, and as a blind and low vision person, now also with ADHD. These are multiple points of marginalization that I identify with. And so the best thing I think people can do around me, especially in leadership, is educate themselves on what workplace trauma actually can look like, because marginalized groups that identify with multiple points of and have multiple points of intersectionality, they identify with so many different points of pain, but also different points of experience in life. There's a lot that can be happening, and they could have experienced any sort of discrimination at any time, and it is compounded, and it can weigh on the mental health. And this person may push through and work and appear to be quote unquote strong, and yet that also may be the person who definitely needs to be encouraged to take a vacation, or they may need a little bit more, when they're asking for accommodations, you definitely want to listen to them. We don't want, where it's possible to mitigate various risks. And there's so many different topics that come up as I'm thinking about this, whose responsibility is it and so on. But just for the sake of being an awesome and great human being that cares about people, it's helpful for us to educate ourselves on what is, and become trauma informed about what can be experienced in the workplace. What is the real impact of workplace toxicity for marginalized groups. I hope that makes sense, but these are some of the things that I experienced and that I like to highlight for leaders and employers so that they are aware of the different experiences that their employee base and their workforce can be facing. Does that help a little bit?
It does. And do you know what I love, Montreece? Because when you speak, and like me and Montreece, we be in communication on WhatsApp. You probably have to chase me a lot more than we'll admit to. But we have so many great conversations. And I love that when you tell a story and you always check in to say, does that make sense? Does that make sense? But you bring us with you. And I'm sure anyone watching saw me and Sadie's reaction when we heard the comment that you had made. And I think to myself, I'm like, are we that ignorant? Like, or as a society, as a white individual, are we that ignorant to the damage that sort of comment would make in that moment, particularly because obviously this had a phenomenal impact globally. You know, organizations all of a sudden were more switched on to being more equitable, and now we're seeing that pullback. And I just want to ask you about that because obviously around that time with George Floyd, we seen that rush to action. Are you noticing a decline in that now? Obviously, with the things going around DI, are you noticing that or feeling that yourself in your work?
Can I add to that as well? Just
Yes.
because it's such a powerful question. I think this ties in really nicely to it. The George Floyd situation had a global impact and a global reach. And I think especially under young generations as well, it really, really hit home and it woke a lot of people up. And from the most devastating situation, the most devastating loss, came a slight light of people realizing the fact that the burden of responsibility to be educated about communities and to be understanding and to have a level of empathy, there is a level of self-responsibility that we all have to take to educate ourselves and be aware. I am such a firm believer that in 2024, it is not my job, your job, Jamie's job, all the incredible advocates out there to be doing this on our own anymore.
Yeah.
When I walk into a room and I'm giving a topic and I'm giving a conversation, it's fantastic to know that people's information has gone from 0 to 80, you know, never 100. It will never be 100, but it's gone from 0 to 80. But the frustrating part is that it has taken me to come in to take you from 0. And so I suppose my question to you is should there be an element of self-responsibility that we all have to take to educate ourselves? We can't constantly rely on being force-fed information, like almost against our will now. It's part of HR training. Not just educating ourselves and making ourselves aware. You know, I sit here and completely recognize my privilege of the fact that I'm white. I'm part of the majority faith in my country. I'm from a very, I suppose, more affluent area of the UK because I'm down from the South Coast. All of these things that I have working with me afford me privileges. And therefore, it's my job as having that position of privilege to understand. I will never fully understand because I've never had the experience, but understand the best that I can from speaking to people and educating myself what Black women experience, what Muslim women are experiencing, all of these different areas of identity. But what's scary is that mindset of being aware of others and educating doesn't seem to be the common way of living and common way of thinking. And I just wanted to add that onto the question that Jamie said, because I think it ties in really nicely about we all have a responsibility now and we should have always done, but especially now more than ever, as our population is more diverse and ever social movement and global mobility. Why do people not have that attitude? And I think it's very poignant for the month that we're celebrating in the US at the moment.
Yeah. I don't know. I think one of the reasons why
that's a very big question, I am aware.
Yeah, it's complicated, and I'm not even going to attempt to really try to answer because I don't know all things. But one thing that I've learned about myself and about my own privilege, and people are actually, I like to say it this way because people, when I have these conversations and I talk about all these different points of my identity and marginalization that I identify with, I do recognize that because of my intersectionality, also there are different privileges that I actually have as well. They're few, but it exists in my life compared to others. Because of that, I don't know. For me, one thing that I've learned about recently, learning about these different points of privilege that I have, is it's imperative for us to understand what decentering is. And I'm hoping that this is really like connecting with the question, because I feel like I almost had an ADHD squirrel for a second. But decentering, I believe, has helped me on my own journey in learning and unlearning ableism, unlearning internalized ableism, unlearning all forms of ableism. And Arthur Chan is in my network on LinkedIn, and he has a little graphic about decentering, and he's walking through these different steps on what we can do to remove ourselves from the narrative at some point and center on someone else, not interject our own opinions or or our ideals, and actually learn from someone else's experience. And also, in terms of being a really good ally, ask them questions on how you can support or but not necessarily tokenize them either. It's more just coming with curiosity. That is what I personally have been on a journey to do. And I feel like I'm constantly asking questions. And I think if we come with this sense of curiosity, I can't remember who said that, but who was it? I can't remember who said this quote, but if we're coming with curiosity and kindness and not being polite, but truly being kind and empathetic towards others and truly looking to learn about different people's experiences, I think that is one huge step towards growing in our own knowledge, in our own journey. And I agree with you, Celia. Like I said, it's exhausting. It is exhausting being the one who, like, I feel like others are relying on me to educate them. And I don't always have all of the energy and everything for that. So I'm hoping that others here who may not have been aware of that being people's experience, think about that. It can be really, really exhausting being the minority, quote unquote, in the group and relying on, and everyone is relying on you to tell them how to do these things better. Instead, there's too many books. There's too many YouTubes. There's too many podcasts. If you need a bite size, check out TikTok. Like there's so many different avenues of getting information. And this wonderful podcast. Yay! And learning ableism live, and learning from Jamie and Celia and people like different ones in the chat as well. Learn from others. Really take the time to be curious in your own time. I know we don't have so much time. I hate that these are only an hour. It goes so quickly. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Did I answer your question, Celia? Did I answer your question? I feel like I got away from it.
Perfectly.
Good grief. Okay.
You did. Like you took us on the journey and you make it so digestible for everyone to understand. And I think what I'm hearing that as well is that it's all around that accountability. Like information's out there. You can't expect everybody to constantly be your educator. There has to be an element of self-learning and taking that on board. And I think one thing as well that I notice, and I think I've mentioned it a few times on this live, on this podcast, is I think when you tell somebody to kind of don't decenter yourself in this situation, it's not about you. It's about this person's lived experience. It's about their experiencing. And I think sometimes when you speak to a person with lived experience of disability or who is neurodivergent, particularly those who are neurodivergent, somebody who has ADHD, we want to relate. Oh, I can understand that. Oh, I've been there. Oh, this happened to me, and it's kind of the same. And some people will take that as, oh, you're just centering yourself. And it says like, well, actually, that person is trying to relate to you in their own way, which doesn't correlate. And I think that element of kindness is so important, because I think sometimes when you are telling someone, listen, I appreciate you want to relate in this moment, however, you're not going to be able to relate, and rather what I'd like from you is just to listen to this or learn from this. And I think it's that kindness, it's the kindness in being honest with somebody, rather than kind of just snap at them and say, don't center yourself. Explain to them why, because they may not understand why. And then, because it's happened to me, I've accidentally inverted myself into a conversation, and before I knew it, I was being told, oh, you shouldn't center yourself. And I was like, I was trying to be an ally. I wanted to show you that I understood how this worked, and I understand. And I think it's one of the 101 of privilege as a white, particularly as a white male, is to be able to turn around and go, do you know what? I don't understand this. Let me understand this from others. Let me actually step back, and rather than feel the need to fill that void of silence, is to sit in that silence, be comfortable in
Yes.
that silence, because in that comfortableness, that is you taking accountability, that is reflection. And I think, particularly for those who are disabled as well, when you tell somebody who has lived experience of disability that actually you have privilege, they find it so hard to comprehend. And in fact, I find it also probably, I've worked in DEI for about just over 3 or 4 years now, and I think in that time, what I've realised is that with disability, it's so hard to get a community of people who are marginalised through disability than, say, a community who are LGBTQIA plus to recognise and understand privilege, because we're so left out of DEI, and you're like, but this doesn't include me, and oh, they're talking about DEI, and it's not accessible, and I can't engage, and you don't feel included. But I
Right.
think being able to understand, you have to understand the privilege you have. Yes, you have a disability, but you're also a white male. So you're going to have a completely different experience to that
Right.
black trans disabled person. We have to look at every element. And it's the same as, we're talking about these milestones and these celebrations, these events, and it comes back to that too. We do not exist in isolation, and nor should the actions we're taking exist in isolation. They need to support each other, just like systems of oppression uplift and support each other. Our
Yes.
work needs to be inclusive. If your inclusion isn't accessible, it is going to marginalize people further. So it's looking at how your foundations are built and ensuring that each thing is supporting the other, complementing it. Sorry, I took it. That was my ADHD.
Brilliant. I think relates almost perfectly to what you've just said. Love Art Pick said the issue is people need to get comfortable in just being the person who listens and not the person who acts. And I think that is an incredible synopsis and summary to add to what you just said, Jamie.
Yeah.
100%. So, unconscious, we have about 10 minutes. 9 minutes. Where did the time go? Do you know what we're going to need to start doing? And this is probably a behind the scenes stuff, but I'm going to say it now. We're going to have to start doing snippets and being right, we didn't get to talk about this, so let's record it and release it another date. This might have to happen. There goes my fidget pen. I'm conscious that there's a lot of chat in the conversation. Celia, I'm Montreece. Feel free to go through the chat, take some questions. If there's any questions, Montreece, let's get them answered. But obviously, let's share some comments. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to butcher it.
I'm on it. And there's a lot of love for you, Montreece, in the comments, and a lot of gratefulness as well for sharing your stories, which people are saying you shouldn't have those stories, and it's upsetting to hear, but it's important for people to hear so that they understand and that everybody can learn from. The comments also backing up that there has to be a level of self-education. Lisa said, I love that method of not interjecting your own feelings, thoughts, or advice. It's about listening and bringing thoughtful questions to the conversation. And we've spoken a lot on this podcast about conscious intent, really thinking about the purpose of what you're saying and the question that you're asking, and what is the outcome for that question. Is it designed to embarrass somebody? Is it designed to belittle someone? Or is it a genuine point of learning and wanting to understand? And one of the things that's kind of been brought up a lot in the comments, and I want to fire it at you, Montreece, as one of my final questions. It's very difficult. And I get people saying this to me all the time and I say it to other people all the time, is unless you've lived it, you will never, ever fully understand. You will never understand the mental burden. And I know you spoke very openly and very honestly, and we're so grateful for that, about the mental burden that these experiences have had on you, where no person should be sat in a situation saying to themselves, am I being discriminated against because of the color of my skin, because I've got a disability, and having to ask themselves those questions. What advice would you give around the question of the fact that unless you've lived it, you're never going to fully understand it? And quite often people put a barrier up and say, well, why would I even bother then? If you're telling me I'm never going to fully get it, then what's the point of me even trying to have this conversation? And it's something that I get asked a lot, is what is the answer to that question? And I'd love to know your take on it.
Reframe the question for me one more time, because there was a lot said there, and I want to make sure that I capture it.
So I know I babble.
No.
I babble. Now my neurospicy brain's going at me.
No, it's good.
A lot of people say, and I say it too, unless you've lived it, you will never fully understand it.
Yeah.
how do we balance that argument with why it's still so important to train people and bring awareness and bring education? And on the other hand, we're still saying you will never understand it because of the privileges that you have. It's that kind of fine balance of conversation and argument as to why education is still vital, but still respecting the fact that unless you've lived it, you will never have that full experience. I
Yeah.
hope I condensed it down better.
That is better. And I mean, it was fine the first time as well, Celia. So don't do that. But oh, wow, that's a great question. We don't have enough time. I will say that I believe that I think we put a lot of weight on understanding, and I believe, especially now in my 40s, it's a different journey on this side of life, and I believe that one does not necessarily have to fully actually understand what someone else is going through in order to empathize. And I believe that one does not necessarily have to understand in order to make conscious decisions about how they communicate with and interact with other people. I may not understand everything about autism, and yet I can still empathize with and respect a person. I don't like to say, because I saw this somebody else's graphic about a person with autism, so I try to balance this. But an autistic person, I can still respect and empathize with an autistic person without fully understanding autism. I don't have to walk in autistic shoes to show respect. I don't have to walk in deaf shoes to love a deaf person. I don't have to the bottom line is we can still be respectful, we can still be caring, loving, compassionate toward one another without a full-on complete. You're not going to have a degree in someone else's experience. That is the first thing that comes to mind. I really don't feel like I'm doing it justice.
No, that was the most incredible answer, and from that answer, you have received so many comments of people absolutely worshipping the ground that you walk on right now. So Lisa said, "Thank you so much, Montreece, for bringing your confidence and strengths to the conversation. I also want to thank you for bringing your real insight and higher consciousness. I learned a lot about intersectionality and compounded intersectionality through a new lens," with a love heart emoji. And I just wanted to read that out just to attest for how incredible you've been as a guest and how educational you have been as well.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Celia. I also want to add one more thing, because at the heart of all of this, I believe that social emotional learning and that type of education, investing time in what is social emotional learning. I can't even, I'm dropping it at the last few minutes. So take the time for all of us, including myself. This is me speaking to me. Take the time to learn more about what it is to be emotionally aware of ourselves and others, and think about what it is to also be trauma informed, because everybody is experiencing a lot right now. I also appreciate you, Celia, for bringing up the Hurricane Milton, and in that situation, I think there's wildfires somewhere in the US. I cannot remember. It's like an entire mountain on fire somewhere. There's a lot going on in a lot of places. So just being better human beings by being empathetic and thinking through showing up better for others by decentering ourselves is probably going to be one of the best things that we can do in the workplace and just in general overall. I heart you all, heart hands again to Jamie and Celia and everybody in the comments, which I cannot see. So thank you guys so much.
That was honestly incredible. And do you know what? We usually ask people at the end, like, what one thing do you want to take away from this live? And I think we didn't even have to prompt you, because you bring us on the journey you do. You make it digestible, you make it relatable, and you try to ensure that everyone's on that journey. And I appreciate that so much, because for me, it's one of the reasons why I love creating content. It's bringing really complex, what people perceive to be complex issues, and trying to make it understandable. And we really share that. And I know Celia does too. And I just want to say, we really appreciate Montreece. Like, this has been incredible, and it is a great way for us to start National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Before we go, because we have about just over a minute left, if you have enjoyed today's episode, please repost this, share it with your networks, catch up 2 weeks later when it will be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, I can't remember the rest, but choose your favorite streaming platform. A transcript will be available on www.unlearningableism.com, and then you can also watch this video back 2 weeks from now with open captions, and we promise our video editor will not be like automated captions, which does not like the Irish accent. But from me, I just want to say again, Montreece, you are just the most fabulous individual, and I have so much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It takes one to know one. Thank you, guys.
Hearts. But yeah, catch us up next time. I believe we're back on the 24th for another live, where we will be joined by another guest talking about National Disability Employment Awareness Month and all things horrors of ableism. So until next time, catch you then.
Bye, everyone.
The Unlearning Ableism podcast is sponsored by Break, an award-winning global social enterprise run entirely by disabled people for disabled people. So if you're looking for a job in an inclusive employer, or you are an organisation looking for disabled talent, find job listings and set up alerts on the Break job board today. Visit evenbreak.co.uk or scan the QR code. The Unlearning Ableism podcast, sponsored by Break.